it's Julie from Story a Day here, and I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about creativity in the time of pandemic, since that's where we are. And it's difficult, right? It's difficult to concentrate. It's difficult to know what to do. I'm fortunate that I happen to live with someone who invents medicines for one of the largest vaccine companies in the world. And so I have a really good source of information. And contrary to some hype, the pharmaceutical companies don't actually want this to go badly. They are taking precautions themselves and believing that it could be bad, and they're shutting down sites. And so the reason I wanted to talk about this is because as a creative person, you're probably somebody who thinks deeply, who gathers information. There's a temptation, certainly for me, when there's a big event like this, to plunge into it and read everything. So, because somewhere in my head, I'm telling myself, this is material, right? If I'm writing a story, I want to know how people react, and I want to know how things go. And temptation is to read everything, but that's not very helpful. What's helpful is to think about ways that you can actually help. One of the things that the science is telling us is that travel and getting into big spaces with other people is a terrible idea. I'm scheduled to go to a conference in April. Look at me, I'm touching my face. I can't stop myself. I'm scheduled to go to a conference in April in Orlando, and I'm having a really hard time cancelling my reservation for the hotel because I know, for me, the right thing to do to stay in integrity with my beliefs is to cancel, because the end of April in an international destination in the US is probably terribly irresponsible of me to go, believing what I believe from the information I've gathered. And I'm having trouble cancelling the reservation because I'm of FOMO. I know, like, if we all do the right thing and this doesn't get as bad as it could, I'm going to be like, oh, I could have gone, even though I know intellectually doing the right thing is what made it not get so bad. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cancel my reservation right now. Okay, canceling my hotel reservation. Oh, here we go. Why not? Okay. So now I've made that decision. How do I feel? I can stop thinking about this. I can stop looking at projections of when this is going to get really bad. And I can know that I've made that decision. Also, I just freed up a week in April. Oh, and this is like 2 weeks before Story a Day starts. So now I can start thinking about, maybe I can do some stuff with you guys. Some virtual events, some like free warm-up stuff for Story a Day that I wasn't thinking about doing before. Maybe we'll do some hangouts and some implementation days where we'll get on a live thing like this, and we'll sit and write together and get you warmed up for Story a Day. All right, cool. So now that I can stop thinking about that, I'm freeing up brain cycles for other stuff, and stuff that will let me help. All right, this is all right. I feel this feels good. So what can you do as a writer? I would suggest that maybe you do what I just did and decide how you're going to react to this right now. Are you going to take precautions, socially isolate? I know I'm talking to writers about socially isolating. This is heaven. We're like, you want me to socially isolate? Okay. Because we tend to, we tend to crave sitting alone in our rooms. So how are you going to react to it? Are you going to look at cancelled events as a bad thing, or are you going to look at them as an opportunity to do some writing? Now, I foresee some challenges, but I'll get to that in a minute. So I wrote down some notes here, things that you could do to actually help, right? If people are going to be sitting alone at home or at home with family, they're going to need entertained. Maybe this is a great time to start looking at your archives of stories and seeing if there's anything that you could share with the people whose email addresses you already have. Maybe this is a good time to set up a mailing list and say to people, hey, if you want me to send you a story every week for the next 6 weeks, while we ride this thing out, just to brighten your day, just to distract you a little, jump on my mailing list and I will send you a story every week, every Friday, every Saturday morning. I'll send you a story for the next 6 weeks. What can we do as creative people to help people get through this? Could you put together a collection of stories and put them up on Amazon? And maybe you sell them for 99 cents, or maybe you give them away for free, or maybe you do a fundraiser for somebody who you know is being impacted by this. Maybe somebody who had to cancel an event, maybe a local literary charity that isn't going to do their fundraiser. Maybe you could do a fundraiser for them by selling a collection of your stories. Ways to help yourself as a writer. This is what I really want to talk about. And what I just did there in making this decision that I'm just no going back. I've cancelled the hotel. I can't get that room back. Control your intake. Make decisions like that. Decide what you're going to do to get the information you need from trusted sources and make your decisions, and then think about controlling what you're putting into your brain. I am swearing off anything on social media that deals with this because I'm only getting my information from scientists and things like that. There's also in the US a big primary battle going on for the Democratic candidate to run for president. I am really trying not to follow that obsessively either. I'm allowing myself a little time to watch, not to watch the news. I don't watch TV news because that's just there to sell stuff. I'm trying to read stuff online, and I'm allowing myself a little time of each day to stay informed. But then really staying off social media and controlling the input that you put in is going to be really helpful. I also think that making a plan for this pandemic as a writer is going to include practical stuff. Like maybe you're going to have more time out of your office, so you're not going to be commuting. You are going to free up all that time that you would have spent maybe wandering around shopping malls or whatever else you do out of the house. Maybe that's time that you can write, but it's not going to happen unless you have a plan for it. So I would suggest that you sit down now and think, if my office closes and I don't have that 40-minute commute, how am I going to use that time, that saved time, for writing? Don't just think vaguely that it's going to happen. Make a plan. So, I'll get up at the same time. I will get dressed exactly as if I was going to work, and then I will spend that 40 minutes writing. There's a sample plan. Might not be the right one for you, but actually plan for what you will do if events are cancelled, if your work shuts down, if you can't go out to dinner 3 times a week, or whatever is going to change in your life. Think about now and plan for how you can claw back that time for writing. If, on the other hand, like me, you're probably going to go from an empty house during the day to a house with lots of people in it. If school gets cancelled, if work closes down, I'm going to have 3 extra people around all day long. And I need to make a plan now for how I'm going to do stuff like this, how I'm going to work in time for my fiction, how I'm going to just deal with the fact that there are people around every day and they're all going to want food, and there's going to be more groceries to be done because they're not eating out, at school and work. I'm going to have to think about how I set in place barriers to keep my space and my time, my writing time, kind of sacred, how I'm going to keep people out of this room. Because especially if my kids are home from school, their computers are in here, they're going to have to use those to do their schoolwork. So putting plans like that in place, if your situation is the opposite, is going to be important as well. If your life is simpler, what could you use that time for? Everybody tells me they don't have time to write. Can you use this time? If your life is more complicated, what plans are you going to put in place to keep your writing done? Now, the reason that is important, why I'm saying you should do these things for yourself, is because this wave is going to break. Right now, we are in a moment where we don't quite know what's going to happen. We don't quite know how bad this is going to get, how it's going to affect our schedules, how it's going to affect our economy. It's going to get worse before it gets better, and then the wave will break and life will go back to normal. And when it does, where do you want to be? Do you want to come out of this frazzled and with 3 months of no writing and 3 months of tension having built up because you're not getting your writing done? Or do you want to come out of this with maybe like a new novel brainstormed in that free time that you got? Or maybe you go and learn how to publish things on Amazon, or as digital copies. Maybe you learn how to podcast. Maybe you learn how to record audiobooks. What could you do with this time that will contribute to your journey as a writer? Maybe you read a ton of books. I'm not sure if me popping down to the local indie bookstore and stocking up on a big stack of books is entirely in alignment with my decision to socially isolate. But I figure I can probably pop in and out. Maybe that's something I can do. Support a local business and get a ton of books ready to read. Maybe I can just go over to my shelf and look at all the books up there that I maybe haven't read yet. Think about, pull yourself out of the panic of this situation. Firstly, by limiting your social media, if that feels right to you. And think about where you want to be in 3 months, 6 months, 2 years. How are the actions that you're taking today contributing to that? Reading more about the projections of how this is going to go is not going to serve me at this moment. Other work beckons, creative work. We need stories. We need entertainment. We need connection with other people. And if we're not getting it by going out and socializing, we're going to get it through stories and books. We're going to get it through virtual events and hanging out. Maybe writers' conferences are going to be cancelled. My writers' group's going to be fine because we meet online. The Story Day Superstars, we get together in a Zoom meeting and we write together and we talk on Slack. So planning for things that you can do to both lead your community, think about how you can help local literary organizations. Can you help with organizing a virtual seminar? Or, could you teach a class virtually on something that you've learned about writing to the kids from your school's English class who are at home now? Could you volunteer to help out the teacher with that? Could you volunteer to run some writing prompts for them? Anyway, there's tons we can do as creative people that's going to contribute in a positive way to this moment in history. Reading everything we can find on social media is not going to do that. Stopping all of our creative input because we're worried about stuff we can't control is not going to do that. Things we can control, we can wash our hands, we can keep our distance, we can make smart decisions about travel, and then we can get back to our writing. We can contribute in such a positive way. We can entertain, we can warn, we can allow people to not be worried about this thing by distracting them, giving them an outlet. So there you have it. It's time to lead. It's time to be a creative person. Think about where you want to be when all this is over, and don't let your creativity stop, because it's not going to help. It's going to be crazy making if you're not writing. Think about how you can help your community beyond just doing your own writing. Maybe there's something you can do virtually that would help someone. Use your time wisely. Plan for times when other people are going to get in your way. And that's what I have for you today. I hope that you are feeling fine. I hope that you are staying healthy. I hope that you are keeping everything in perspective, being sensible, and thinking about how you can be one of those people in a time of crisis who helps. And if all you can do to help is not spread some panic, that's fine. If you can help by writing a story and sharing it and inviting people to take a moment out of their life to read something that's not coronavirus related, then fine, do that. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. Plan for disruptions to your schedule, whether they're good disruptions or bad disruptions. Don't let your creativity stop. Implement, implement, implement. Keep writing, keep producing, because that's how we stay loose. That's how our writing gets better. We just have to keep doing more and more and more of it. There's nothing about this situation that should stop you from writing. And if you are finding yourself obsessed and anxious because of the news that you're consuming, remember, you don't need to know minute by minute what's changing. You're sensible. You know what to do. You're good now. Go write some stories.